money. It don't mean it's right. Okay? Another decision is where to live. Okay? Do I continue to stay where I'm at? Do I sell? Do I buy? You ever been to that decision? You know, do I live here? Do I rent? Do I do this? And then we've got to keep in mind every decision has consequences. Okay? You take credit cards as a perfect example. You charge, you charge, you charge, you charge credit cards. Sooner or later, you got to say, "Hey, I got to pay this off." So, you know, you can just go through all sorts of decision-making process. Now, what drives these decisions? What makes people make decisions that they make? Why do people make a certain decision? What are they usually based upon?
Their own happiness.
Their own happiness. Right? Number one, I got to be happy. What else? You're right. What else?
How about their lack of
What?
happiness?
Well, their lack of happiness too. And the other thing, Kathy, is when you think about it, you could also say, I'm trying to please other people. You know, I do it out of guilt, or I do it out of this, or, you know, I'm trying to please others. So my decision making is what makes everybody else happy. And then sometimes your decision making can be made on, I want it now. I want it now. Now, if you look at that first paragraph there, it says, God is the creator of all that existed. All things were made through him, and without him nothing was made that was made. John 1:3. As the creator and order of the universe, he has a right and the power to perform all circumstances to his will. He is also entitled to expect a certain standard of behavior for those who believe in him, because God's standards are higher than the present culture of living. In obeying his commands will set you apart from the crowd. It will make you a target for scorn from the world that denies his authority. What do we say? Most people say, well, I'm saved. But that's a good thing. That's the best thing that could happen in your life. We say we're not saved by works, and we are not saved by works. We're strictly saved by grace. We know that through faith. But that does not give us the right to go live any way we want to live. It does not give us the right to make any decision that we want to make. Right? Because when we got saved, we're saying, Lord, I'm yours. I'm part of your family. I'm tired of whatever I want to. I'm thinking about my future. I'm thinking about eternity. I'm thinking about life after physical death here, and so on. So, Lord, you're the boss. You're the authority. You're my father. You're my friend. You know what's best. I want to follow you. I need help in making decisions. Now, we always got to remember decisions has consequences with them. We're going to talk about those just for a minute, in a minute. But this is the main thing to remember tonight. All obeying God and leave all the consequences to him. That's the whole theme of tonight. Obey God and leave the consequences to him. And you'll see what I mean in a minute. But if you look there at the principles in action, Noah. Notice what it says in 6:22, Genesis 6:22. It said, Noah did everything just as God commanded him. Okay? Nothing indicated there was a storm coming. It never rained before. God told Noah to build an ark. He gave him specific measurements of how high, how tall, 3 stories, and so on. Now, that would be like telling Frank to go build a rocket ship in his backyard, because we're going to Venus. You'd look at him like he's half crazy. Right? Well, you can imagine how Noah lived back then. But here's the key. Noah obeyed God and left the consequences to God. Now, 120 years to build an ark and be laughed at and mocked at, that's a long time. But after that 120 years, Noah and his family were saved. The earth was utterly destroyed. first shower, storm, rain came, it wiped it away. But what a lot of people don't know, in chapter 6 of Genesis, it says that the people gave every thought of imagination. In other words, they gave their brain to whatever thought they had in their imagination. If I think this is right, I'm right. If you think that's right, you're right. Everybody's right, everybody this, everybody that. No absolute. And it said that they sinned wickedly and exceedingly. In other words, they just went on and on and on. Now, the unique part about the story is God gave them 120 years to listen to Noah. Nobody did but his family. Now, the consequences at the beginning didn't look good. It never rained. You're not even building this yacht close to water by the sea. Okay? And then 120 years, you would think after a few years, people would say, Noah, you want to give it up? Noah, you tired of this lifestyle? Noah, no. Why don't you give in? Plead temporary insanity, and we won't be alive. Didn't happen. Okay? Now, what we learn through this is God's faith, great faith does not blossom overnight. It's a result of years of trusting and obeying God. Now, if you did your homework last week, you read Daniel chapter 3. And this is the first principle kind of we learned when we talk about how do we take action when it comes to obeying God and leaving the consequences to Him. Because everybody says, I obey God. Everybody says, I leave it in God's hands. But most of the time, we make our own decisions without God. Now, so how do you do that? How do you obey God and leave all the consequences? You know, number one, and you look on day one there, it says staring down the challenges. Okay? Obeying God is essential to please Him. Obedience can be challenging, no doubt. I mean, it will challenge you. Every time you're obedient to God, it's going to challenge you. Now, I'm going to skip on down here, but the word obey in the Old Testament actually means to listen. It also means to heed, take note of, listen carefully, agree, consent, understand, and yield to. Now, you think about, in Daniel chapter 3, do y'all remember who you read about? Yeah, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Was there any statement they made to you that stood out? Any statement? Just one statement.
That they wouldn't serve as God or bow down.
Okay? That's a good one. Now,
They also said that whether they, kind of like, oh, where I live, whether God saved us or not. I don't have the exact verse.
one thing I like is when he said, our God is able to serve us and will save us. But then he said, if he don't, we're still not going to bow down to your gods. Now, what does that tell you about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? I made my decision. I'm following God. Whatever happens, happens. That's tough, right? Now, I'll try to read a story to you. My eyesight is acting up tonight. I'm going to try to read something to you in Acts chapter 5. I want to see, now let me tell you what's happening. This is the early church. Peter and them are going around. The church in Jerusalem is growing by leaps and bounds. You know, it was seashores of Galilee where it all started, where Jesus said, follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. We read in Acts chapter 1, there was 120 in the upper room. And in Acts chapter 2, we find that there's 3,000 souls were saved and were added to the church, they were baptized, and so on. Well, this church is growing by leaps and bounds. But other things are happening. God's in the midst of these people. People are getting saved. People are getting healed. The church is growing. People are one accord, and so on. In Acts chapter 5, beginning with verse 15, listen to this. As a result, the people brought the sick into the street and laid them into the bed and mats, so that so that at least Peter's shadow might fall on them as they passed by. Crowds gathered also from towns around Jerusalem, bringing their sick and those tormented in unpure spirits, and all that of them that were healed. All of them were healed. Now this is the part. Then the high priest and all the associates, which was the Sadducees, were members of the party of the Sadducees, were filled with jealousy. They arrested the apostles, and put them in the public jail. But during the night, an angel of the Lord opened the door in the jail and brought them out. The angel said to them, "Go stand in the temple court," he said, "and tell all the people about his new life." At daybreak, they entered into the temple courts, and they had been told and began to teach the people. When the high priest and his associates arrived, they called together the Sanhedrin, which was what we would know as the Supreme Court, the United States Supreme Court. There's about 70, maybe 72 of them. And the full assembly of the Sanhedrin, the Supreme Court, the elders of Israel, and sent to jail for the apostles. For the arrival of the jail and the officers did not find them there. So they went back and reported, "We found the jail securely locked, with the guards standing at the door, but when we opened them, we found no one inside." On hearing this report, the captains of the temple guards and the chief priests were at a loss, wondering what might lead to. What this might lead to. And someone came and said, "Look, these men that you put in jail are standing in the temple in the court teaching the people." And that the captain went with the officers and brought the apostles. They did not force, because they were scared of the crowd. Okay? They were scared of the people would stone them. The apostle was brought forth and made to appear before the Sanhedrins, the top 70, 72 people, Supreme Court, okay, very powerful group, to be questioned by the high priest. He said, "We gave you strict orders not to teach to this name." He said, "Yet you have filled Jerusalem with your teaching and determined to make us guilty of this man's blood." Peter and the other apostles replied, "We must obey God rather than human beings." Anything stand out there? Let me tell you what stood out to me when I read that. This is the same Peter that denied Christ 3 times. These are the same disciples and Peter that after Jesus died on the cross, was buried, was resurrected, they went and hid and locked themselves in a room because they were scared of what's going to happen. When they finally seen Jesus, and Jesus ascended back up to heaven 40 days later, something happened to the apostles. The only way to say it is they got it. They understood it. When Jesus was with them, and he was doing all these miracles and all these healings and everything else, changing the water to wine, everything that he did, they seen it, they witnessed it, but for some reason they just didn't get it. When Jesus started teaching about how he had to go in the grave for 3 days and 3 nights and then arise from the grave and he's going to be crucified, they didn't want to hear that. But after it happened, and after Jesus ascended to heaven, they got it. This Peter that spoke in Acts chapter 5 is the same Peter. And what he looked at the highest rulers in that day and said, "We will obey God, not human beings, not man." What was he saying? I'm going to obey God, and you do whatever you want to do. I'll leave the consequences to him. If we end up in prison, so be it. If you kill us, so be it. If you don't, we're going out there and preach. Because that's what God told us to do. Now, this is really, to me, an amazing part because Peter really changed and so did the other disciples after Jesus. So the first thing you got to do is you got to stare down the challenge. When I look at Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, when I look at Daniel and the lion's den, I look at Peter in prison, I see Paul in prison, all these people, all I can think about is they stared down the challenge. Whatever you want to do is fine. All I'm going to do is obey God and the rest is up to Him. Do you think many Christians do that today? God knows the question. Any Christians do that today? Probably a few, right? We don't have as many as we should, right? So on day one, that was it, the challenge in Daniel chapter 3. Last week, in day 2, okay, we read Amos, okay, we read Genesis, chapter 3, and Amos chapter 7, verse 14, 15. And this is the second thing that you have to do to obey God and leave the circumstances to Him, is to trust or not to trust. Now, let's go back, and I'm just going to skip around here. The key to resisting Satan is not only submitting to God, but to always remember, disobedience always produces consequences. Disobedience to God will always produce consequences. While sin can never change God's eternal love for us, it can certainly disrupt our fellowship and deny our blessings from God. Now, let me ask you this. Let's go back to the beginning of time. If Adam knew the circumstances of his decision, do you think he would have made the same one? If Adam knew, absolutely not. I guarantee he would have slapped that fruit out of Eve's hand, said, "We're not doing it," stomped on the serpent, something. But if Adam would have knew up front, okay, he would not have made the same decision. Well, King David and Bathsheba. The Bible started with King David and his romance with Bathsheba. It started out saying it was a day when the kings went to war. When you were a king, you went to war with your unit, with your nation. You went to war also. For some reason, David didn't go. I don't know if his military commander, Joab, said, "We got this, boss. Why don't you just stay at home, relax, watch a little ESPN, you're good. We got this." Well, what made David stay at home? But he did. So while David was at home, he decided to go out on the deck. Back then, the decks or patios was up on top of the roof, so you could look down. But it also was protection in case you had high security meetings. So you could do family events up there, picnics, you could do everything. Like I said, it's just a big old patio, big old deck on top of the house. But it gave you privacy as well as security. So they was up there, he went up there, and he was looking around, and he could look down. And so he seen this woman Bathsheba. He sent for her. The romance started. She was married. And David made several attempts before he finally had to do man's seed, which was to kill her husband. David ended up marrying her, and they had a son named Solomon. And I'm not saying that was the only thing that caused this, but David's life was miserable after that. Just so many things happened. Now, was it because of that one particular sin? No. Okay. They had a great young man, Solomon, and all like that. But when you think about what took place there, if David had to do all over again, would he have done it?
But then you don't get Solomon out of But then you don't get Solomon if he doesn't do that.
Yeah, he did. Solomon could have came from somewhere else. But yeah,
But then maybe Solomon wouldn't
But-
have had.
but if, let's go to Abraham. Abraham, at the age of 75, God said, go to a land where I'll show you. Genesis chapter 12. So he goes to a land, and it ended up being Canaan, which was absolutely the land with flowing milk and honey later on. Well, Canaan was going through a famine, but that's where God wanted Abraham to be. What did Abraham do? He kept going. And he went to Egypt. He came back with a handmaid. God had always promised him a child. He was 75. 10 years later, he was 85. Sarah was 75. And Sarah said, look, this ain't working. Why don't you take her? This will be our child, and we'll be happy. So he went and laid with Hagar. Had a child, but that wasn't what God promised. Then 15 years later, at the age of 100, Sarah died. In fact, they laughed, thought it was impossible, just like we would today. And she ended up pregnant and had Isaac. If Abraham would have known the consequences 15 years beforehand, or 25 years, would he have gone to Egypt? Absolutely not. Because there was a war started right there. What about Judas? I mean, this is a hard one to understand. Very faithful member of the church, there every Sunday morning, Sunday night. In charge of the treasury, brought the food, brought the tacos, right? Brought everything. They went and got it himself. Everybody trusted him. He wasn't saved. He sold Jesus out for 30 pieces of silver. He ended up throwing it all back. Chief priest said, why are you doing that for? He left and killed himself. If Judas would have known the consequences, Judas is in hell today, but if Judas would have known the consequences, would he made that same mistake? See, here's the thing. We don't always know we don't know what's going to happen in the future. If you're young and you eat high cholesterol foods most of your life, you're probably thinking it ain't going to hurt you. And if you've got good genes that run in your family, it may not. See people who do that. Got good genes, sometimes it doesn't bother. But somewhere down the road, usually you pay for the high cholesterol food you eat, especially when you get older. So then you got to go back and you got to say, wow, I've got to really cut back this and the other. Well, it's not that easy when you're old. Dirt. Old dirt. Old dirt. So, you know some of the consequences. On the other hand, there's some consequences we don't. If I follow God, what will happen? I don't know. I'm going to get scorned. Things are not always going to be good. But I'll leave that up to him. Now, let's shift gears and go the other way. If Noah could do all over again, would he spend 120 years building the ark? Absolutely. How about Ruth? Ruth was an amazing woman in the Bible. She grew up in the country of Moab. One of the Hebrews married her. They had a good life. She had a sister-in-law. There was 2 Hebrew brothers. They married Moabite girls. The mother-in-law, the father was there. The father died. 2 brother-in-laws died. The mother-in-law became very bitter. She decided she's going back to Bethlehem, go back to her hometown. One of the ladies, Kilian, decided to stay there in Moab, find her a rich husband, live happy ever after. Ruth, on the other hand, she said, I'm going with you. And her mother-in-law basically begged her to stay and even told her to stay. She said, look, when you go, I go. Right? Then she said, your God is my God. Ruth, you've never been to Bethlehem. You've never been out of the country of Moab. These are different people. They may not even like you. Ruth, you got a chance, as young and as pretty as you are, you could go find a hunk of Hebrew, a hunk of Moabite there, and you could live happily ever after. She said, no, I'm going to obey God. Not only did she obey God, but her mother-in-law was bitter. Now you can understand why she's bitter. She's been through a lot. She was depressed, discouraged, and everything else. But anyway, they went back, and later on, she married Boaz. Okay? Now, Boaz ended up being the great-great-grandmother of David, and they lived happily ever after. But she had no earthly idea that's what God had in store for her. If Ruth was to do all over, what she had done. Yes. Queen Esther. She didn't want to enter the beauty pageant. She didn't want all that stardom. Not only did she had to enter it by force, they forced her to, she won the contest. She married a king. Now, when you married a king, it doesn't mean that you had privileges that just come out of the city. You went to your room until he called for you. Well, because of what was going on out there, she had to tell the king that one of his chief executive officers was out to kill all the Jews, and she wanted to stop them to it. But if she came out of that room to face the king, she would be sentenced to death. She came out, and the king said, what can I do for you? And of course, later on, she revealed the news, and the Jews, he couldn't retract or revoke or break the treaty that was signed. He could only make another one. He made another one that the Jews should defend themselves. And the rest was history. So, here's the decision. We can be like Adam. We can be like David, Judas, even Abraham to a certain extent, and decide not to trust. Or we could pull a Ruth, a Noah, and an Esther, and a Daniel, and a Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, and many others. And just say, God, I'm going to obey you with the consequences. This is one of the hardest principles to live. The first one, you remember, is intimacy with God. Spend time with God. If you would, look at the principle in action on the back of your page there. In Amos chapter 7, verse 14 and 15. Does anybody know what Amos did for a living?
Shepherd.
He was a shepherd. What else did he do? He planted sycamore trees. Right? So God called him to be a prophet in Israel. Now when I say Israel, remember the civil war already took place and Israel was divided into two parts. The northern part was called Israel, the southern part was called Judah. Okay, the capital of Judah was Jerusalem. The capital of Israel was Samaria. Now, when he was called to be a prophet there, we always talk about the minor prophets over there in the southern part of Israel called Judah. But he was called for the northern part. And as he went and God called him, he had to make a decision here. I'm a farm boy. I'm not a military man. I'm not a leader. But God called him to go proclaim the word to the northern part of Israel. And he had a choice. He could say, look, I'm a shepherd. They're not going to listen to me. Blah, blah, blah. But he ended up doing it. He chose to obey and drop everything he had. Now, real quick, like, recap. How do you obey God, and leave the consequences again? Number one, staring down the challenge. Look at the challenge and say, it's a challenge, but it's in God's hands, right? and think about the saints of it. Number two, decide to trust or not trust. But look at the examples in the Bible that we gave, whether it be Ruth or whether it be David or somebody else. And then number three, and this is very, very important, is building what? Strategy. Well, actually, excuse me, number three is actually confidence. This is what you learned in day 3. Confidence. When God called Moses out of the burning bush, that is hard to believe. Moses was on the backside of the desert for 40 years. You talk about out there in the boondocks. Moses was out there telling him, God said, I'm sending you to lead my people, 2 million people, out of Egypt. And you're going to talk probably to the most powerful person that ever lived, the Pharaoh. And he said, you're going to bring my people back. On 5 different occasions, Moses questioned God. He first said, Lord, who am I? I've been on the backside of the desert for 40 years. Who am I? And then he said, God, what am I going to tell Pharaoh? Who am I going to tell who sent me? And that's where God said, tell him, I am. But there's something else that Moses said that I really like. He said, Lord, I'm not eloquent in my speech. Like me. I'm not eloquent. I have a stuttering problem. I can't speak very well. And God said, who made the dumb? Who made the lame? In other words, I've got this, right? So, Moses ended up getting the confidence. But it didn't come overnight. Now, look at the principle in action. Mary was blessed to be the mother of Jesus. How can this be? She asked the angel. She said, I don't get it. I've never been with a man before. How could this happen? Of course, the angel told her this is through God. Now, Mary went on to live a courageous life herself. But look down there where it says how to build your confidence. Number 1, what? Wait on the Lord. What do we mean by wait on the Lord?
In His time.
In His time. How do we wait on the Lord?
Impatiently and passionately.
What do we do when we're waiting? Listen. Pray. Are we active or passive? We're active. Okay? When I'm waiting on the Lord for a decision, I'm reading His Word, I'm praying, I'm worshiping, I'm studying, I'm trying to find something. Okay? And I want God's thing, and I'm all ears. Right? I'm listening, God's going to lay something in the heart. So when you wait on the Lord, you're active. You're not passive, you're active. What's the second thing to do? Meditate on God's Word. Once again, the first principle is intimacy with God. Is your first priority. The second one is obey God and leave the circumstances to Him, or the consequences to Him. We just went over several highly popular people in the Bible. Some obeyed, some didn't. But God's ultimate consequences. But when you meditate on the Word of God, you say, Lord, you love me just as much as you did Moses or Esther or anybody else. And God, if you love me that much, if I just follow you and leave the consequences to you, everything will be okay. Right? I mean, it doesn't mean I'm going to walk out here being a millionaire. It doesn't mean that everything in my life is going to be fine. But what it says is, you've got this. Hopefully, God will handle it before 120 years. I know, right? The third thing, trials and challenges. Okay? One of the things, and you keep in mind, when you're talking about how to build confidence, it takes waiting on the Lord. You're not passive, you're active. You're praying, you're studying, you're getting really close to God, you're fellowshipping with Him. 2, you're meditating on God's Word. You're not just reading it, you're meditating, you're learning something. And 3, through trials and challenges. One of the things I'm going to ask you again, let's go back to when Moses led the Hebrew children out of Egypt. He led them down a pathway, and they finally got just this close. This close. They were so close they were able to send out spies, right? 12 spies, and just like any committee, the majority of them were going to be negative. So 10 of them came back with a bad report and said, there's no way we can take over this land. 2 of them, Joshua and Caleb, said, God's already gave it to us, let's do it. Let's just do it. God's already gave it to you. Now you see, what did they do? They were willing to obey God and leave the circumstances to God, or the consequences to God. They said, God's already gave it to us. He already said He's gave it to us, we just have to follow Him. The other 10 just looked at the circumstances and said, man, if we go in after that, they'll kill us. We're going to be ate alive. They were looking at the consequences by human beings, not by God. What was the result? They spent 40 years in the wilderness. Every person 25 years and older died, except Joshua and Caleb's lineage, and because they came back with this report. If the Israelites had to do all over what they'd done, man, I don't care what happens to us, we're going. Right? If they would have only known the 40 years in the wilderness. Sometimes we don't weigh out the consequences. We don't look at the consequences. Most people are, and this goes back to what we talked about in the very beginning, decision making. Do we make decision making based upon the Lord? Or do we make it based upon what I want to do right now? Okay? And then later down the road, and this is what most people, as we get older in life, say, should have spent more time with the Lord. Because the older you get, the more you understand that's really what's important. You know, you try to do everything else in your own flesh. You try to conquer the world. You try to do so much. And you run here, and you run there, and you get this, and get that, and you're exhausted. Then you look back and say, I wasted a lot of years, you know. Solomon, you know, I like to refer back to Ecclesiastes, he's a perfect example. So, remember principle number 2 is obey God and leave the consequences to Him. Next week, the scripture reading is Psalms 119. Chapter 119, verses 97 through 135. Matthew chapter 4, verses 1 to 11. Psalms chapter 91, verse 11 to 12. And then we'll have another principle next week. All right. My time is up. Please read your scriptures, okay? Not just read them, meditate on them, get something out of them. Because I can read these scriptures that I've already read before, and every time I read them, I can still get something out of them. All right, anything before we dismiss?
It's a prayer for the Roman. The email today said that he was diagnosed with blood clot and access.
This is Earl Myers, the missionary we supported.
Yes,
And
we
then
did.
that's supposed to have it re-examined, but they're supposed to go this weekend to daughter's graduation from Liberty.
Liberty.
And, the doctors told him he could probably travel if it had, I think, dissolved or some, or special kind of traffic, like that. But they asked for urgent prayer with, I did put it on
Anything else? All right, let us go to the Lord. Father, in the name of Jesus, we thank you so much. Lord, we thank you so much for these life principles that came from the biblical principles that came out of Charles Stanley's learning and meditating and pastoring and, Lord, fellowship with you. Lord, we pray tonight that you be with each and every one of us and help us to learn from and grow from. Lord, help us to understand that we're not saved by works, but we're saved to be obedient to you. Lord, every aspect of the way. Lord, help us to look at the life of Peter, how he was challenged and all like this, especially, Lord, with you not there. The courage that he had to stand up and say, we're going to obey God, not man. Lord, help us to see how important it is just to obey you. Lord, just put it in your hands and not just say it, live it. And leave the consequences to you. Lord, before we leave here, we want to say a special prayer for our missionary, Earl Myers, Mexico. Lord, his blood clot, Lord, we just pray that you'll touch him and heal him, that he'll be able to see his daughter's graduation in Virginia. Lord, we just pray that you'll be with him and his family and watch over them. Lord, we say a special prayer for all of us tonight, that you will give us a safe journey home and bring us back at our next appointed time. Lord, we give you all the praise and glory. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.